quite a few materials to get through. Um, I don't see folks other than Sue on, but we did extend the invitation to the document formatting working group to attend this meeting as well, as we did at the April 20th meeting. So some of them, obviously, they are not voting members, but certainly opening it up to participate in the discussion. So, with that said, we are officially started, and the first order of business is to review the April 20th meeting summary, ask for any edits or corrections. Otherwise, a motion to approve would be in order. You can make a motion or a second in the chat pod if you're not wanting to join in audio. That is a convention that we do follow, so I encourage you to take advantage of that. Any questions or comments or suggested edits in the with regard to the April 20th meeting summary? And online, I have a motion to approve from Jolene. Is there a second? Katie Carlson has seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or enter aye in the chat pod. And having paused for a moment, would ask if there were any opposed, same sign. Jane, you just voted after I said that. Did you mean you're approving the meeting summary or you're opposing the meeting summary, just to be clear? She's typing again. Okay, very good. I think we have enough votes. We'll call the meeting summary of the April 20th meeting approved. The next item on the agenda is an update relating to the operation of the of the search application. And I could give a demo if you wanted me to. We don't have a lot of time today given the length of the agenda, but the search application for all counties except one has been enabled. Potawatomi County, I don't mean to say that they're not in the search application, but for technical reasons relating to authentication, we have some steps to complete yet to get the Potawatomi County Recorder's Office connected. And then the last step we discussed as a team, that is our internal support team. I believe we were at least a third, maybe almost a half of all of the e-submitter organizations have been enabled for the search applications, meaning that their organizations are going to be able to log into e-submission and access the search application directly without using a separate login, which is one of our long-standing goals, actually, to be able to have single sign-on. So that is coming to fruition. We are, in this last 2 weeks of July, going to be reaching out another time to all of the submitter organizations. And if they're choosing to not take advantage of being able to access the search application, which we are not requiring them to do, that is their option. But if they choose not to enable the search application for their organization, we are requiring them to update and accept the updated terms of use. So that is in play. So the communication that will be going out essentially is going to say, you still have an opportunity to enable your organization for accessing the search application, but if you are not, we still need you to respond to our query because we are requiring all organizations to accept the updated terms of use. We did make a number of changes. We have more changes that we're going to be talking about today. Um, and uh, and then subsequently with the full ESS committee meeting at their August meeting. But um, it has been a long time since we um, have asked the submitter users to affirmatively say, yes, I accept the terms of service. So we're going to be doing that. Then, as we get to the end of July and into August, then we're going to start opening up applications for the search application users to submit applications to be able to access the new search application with a notice indicating that we do intend to terminate the legacy search application sometime by the end of the year. We haven't set a hard date for that, but we, um, for support reasons and just because there are a few security issues related to it as well, uh, we're going to need to turn off the legacy search application. So um, we're trying to be sensible about that in terms of giving notice to our registered search users who are all users who have signed up as individual self-registered users of the system, whether they're contact information is real or fictitious. We're going to be notifying them. And basically, our target audience is anybody who has logged into the search application within the last calendar year. We really are not going to be making any effort to communicate with users who have not logged in more than a year ago. That's just not something we have the bandwidth to do. Another feature of our communication strategy is to communicate with um, the individuals who have business domains. That is, they registered to use the legacy search application and they registered with an apparent and obvious business website domain, indicating that they might be associated with a bank or a law firm. Those are really our priorities for communicating with. Um, Somewhat lower priority are going to be those that we can't identify, but they may have registered with a Gmail account or a Hotmail account or something like that. We will be communicating with them, but they are not going to be our first priority when we start making this transition in the month of August. Then, for all of those users, that is, anybody who's self-registered in the legacy application that maybe is not associated with the business domain, they'll also be notified that coming up is also an opportunity to sign up for the individual search application. And by that we mean that they really aren't in the business of real estate in any capacity. They don't have a need to access a significant amount of records, um, but they are more in the category of a citizen who wants to have access to their own records or to look up their family records. And we have a separate user class called individuals who we will start setting those folks up as well. That I don't think is really going to start in earnest until maybe the end of August. And then we'll start opening it up to individuals who maybe don't have to access the same number of records that if you're a real estate agent or a banker or a mortgage company, uh, that's just a different class of user. And so we have a business class of user or an organization class, and then we have an individual class. And I'll talk more about the individual class coming up in another part of the agenda. So just wanted to give everybody a quick update on where we are at with the transition. I would also share with you that we've put a significant amount of effort into communicating with our stakeholder organizations. So, the Bankers Association, the Bar Association, right on down the line, letting them know. In fact, I sent a message to them last week just giving them an update on how the transition is going, and to solicit their interest in communicating with their members. If they get any questions, then they'll know what's going on, and can direct them appropriately. Um, and then the other thing that we communicated with the stakeholders on is the updates to the terms of use. So that is in play as well. Um, so uh, and thank you, John. That's your comment. So we'll be sure to record that. The I would just pause briefly to ask if you have any questions about the search application at this time. Okay, I'm looking in the chat pod. Any questions? Um, I guess I'll add just one more thing, and that is that there are a few bugs in the new search application that we are discovering as people use it, and then also some suggested changes that would improve the functionality of it that may not have been considered in the planning process, but they're coming to the fore as people are actually using the system. And we are assembling a list of those ideas and issues, putting them in some measure of priority order. And we do anticipate another a short development cycle to address as many of those issues as we can. I will be talking about that coming up in just a minute as well. So I don't want you to feel anybody to feel like, hey, we're done. We're not going to make any more changes. It's an ongoing process, and we are going to start doing that here shortly. Moving on, I did have a couple of things out of order here. So if you're following along in your packet, I've skipped ahead to page um, um, uh, 13. Um, and in that, I want to just verify I'm looking at the right thing here. No, never mind. I don't have to skip ahead. I'm just looking at the wrong point in the agenda. So I'm on page 6, and I just wanted to give you an update that uh, we have completed discussions with Lynn County and settled in on a final version of a cooperative. It actually is another version of a 28-year agreement. And basically, what this means is that we have agreed to work together, and ESS will be providing the payment component of a new application that is expected to be rolled out in Lynn County in September. If you had a chance to read through um, the annual report that we distributed to supervisors recently, you probably saw that we inserted an article on that, basically announcing that we have this capability, but Lynn County really hadn't announced anything yet, so we didn't name them. Um, this is an official public domain document um, with ESS, and we've shared it before. So I don't think I'm really spilling any beans here, but I wanted you to know that you may have seen this before in either uh, the previous April agenda, or you might have seen it in the packet for the ESS Coordinating Committee, and that um, has been fully executed now. So this is in your packet is a copy of the final agreement that we have with Lynn County, and we appreciate it. We have some more work to do. There's some testing that needs to be done, but they're planning on rolling that new application out as of September 1st. And I do want to just thank uh, Joan and all of the members of the Lynn County team. Joan kind of maybe behind the scenes started the discussion. Teresa Sackett is somebody in the recorder's office there that's been playing point on this, so we've been mostly working with her, but obviously Carolyn has been involved as well, and we're really excited to do this. One of the opportunities that this presents is that with the knowledge that we gain, it is possible that at some point in the future, I'm going to just say the soonest would be, fall of next year, 2024, to maybe offer the opportunity for other counties to have access to an online license renewal application. And all of that as a result of this cooperative arrangement. So I just would say thank you to Joan and Carolyn and Teresa for helping get us to this point. And I just mostly wanted to give you a quick update on that. Perhaps at a future meeting, we might actually be able to give you a demo how that system works. But we're happy to be a contributor to it. Um, that's just a quick update. Well, I'd be happy to answer any questions or receive any comments that you may have.
I will just say thanks for hanging in with us, Phil. I know it was kind of excruciating for the signatures from the IT department, but I appreciate your patience.
You bet. Well, overall, they've been very good to work with, and we're trying to give them gentle encouragement to get a little additional testing done. I think one of the important things that we need to do is we actually need to do some production tests before the system goes live. So even if it means that I get out my credit card and buy a fishing line, something, we're gonna actually do a couple of live payments through the system before we officially call it working. But the main reason that Lane County wanted to work with us is that they were looking for somebody who could provide a payment service to them that didn't expose them to the requirements of having to comply with the PCI requirements, which we do, and this methodology that we're using, enables that to happen. And um, so it's definitely a win-win from my perspective. So thank you, John. Any other comments about that before I move on? Okay, I'm trying to get through a few updates for you before we get into the policy discussion. The next update is just to let you know that we have finalized our managed agreements with all of the local service providers with the exception of one. And that particular service provider serves only one county, and there are discussions happening uh, with that service provider in the county during this period, and we look forward to getting it completed. I guess I don't want to characterize it as an issue that needs to be resolved. It's just a step that needs to be taken, and we're working with them to get that done. I think the big story is that in the maintenance agreements, we are starting to draw a very hard line about when the LCM, which is still used by a number of counties and a few service providers, when that is going to be completely discontinued and no longer supported. Um, some of the service providers that I would say maybe the main service provider that currently uses the LCM has been actively developing and working with our team to test. But I thought you would be interested in seeing or observing um, the, um, the schedule of what we're on. So we're looking to, for the e-submission application, just continue the LCM as of September 30th. So we're coming right up on that deadline here soon, but we think that we're going to make it. Uh, then we're looking ahead to June 30 of 2024 to discontinue the SOAP version of the API that many or most of the service providers use, because we're moving to a new application interface that is more secure, more streamlined, um, and um, and then after that, we're looking at basically moving to a new API for the county upload system. This is the API that is used by the service providers to transfer your recently recorded documents or even your backfile documents from your local system up into the Iowa Land Records database. Um, that I would just say um, none of you have ever had any reason to look at it, but both of those APIs have a significant number of moving parts that basically navigate or set the rules for the the integration between your county systems and Iowa land records. And I would just have to say, hopefully you don't really notice it much, except that we think going forward that there'll be fewer service requests, that things are going to work a little bit more smoothly, to be clear about who needs to fix what when something does go haywire. But it really, I would consider it to be a major sea change. And I wish to give credit to two of our internal developers, Mancia Garwal um, and Myrna Addison. They have been playing point on actually rewriting the whole application interface, and they're also playing point on working with the service providers to make the transition. Just to give you a sample, we've put together sort of a worksheet for the local service providers to use on all of the functionality that needs to be included in the new APIs. This particular worksheet concerns the e-submission application. We're going to be publishing something very similar with regard to the county upload application, but this worksheet includes a point-by-point overview of all the steps that they have to do. It includes some guidance in terms of how to structure their computer code, and we're even showing them some specific examples of how to use different types of computer coding software to make this integration work. And then we have put together an actual checklist, things that we're going to go through. And so when a service provider says, I think we're done, we're ready to move into production, we're going to go through this checklist to make sure that everything is working as it should be. And so those are some examples. And then this is an FAQ that goes along with it. Review it at your leisure, not expecting you to dive into detail, but we want you to know the details are there and that we're working through them. And we appreciate the work that your local service providers are doing. And the only thing we would ask at this point is to, express your appreciation for them to getting this done. This is going to result in an improvement for the overall system and a more secure system. Uh, and uh, and to uh, really thank them for their work and encouraging them to keep going, and to let them know that it's as important to you as it is to the Iowa Land Records team. So that's the update on that. Um, and then I'll pause and say, are there any questions about that? But it's a big deal, um, but it's happening mostly behind the scenes. Any questions about that? Okay, I'm moving on. So recently, we shared with the Finance Subcommittee an update of all of the developments that we've been doing over the last 2 years. You generally may be aware that we have been primarily relying on reserve funds to make these investments, and we're nearing the end of that overall overhaul project, of which the API updates are a part of that. The difference is that we've been using reserve funds for the work of a third-party service provider that we identified through an RFP process to do much of that work, while Nancy and Myrna are focusing on updating the API. This is just a summary of that whole process of how we started, where we went through the RFQ process, and then there are bullet points here that identify the actual software changes that we have made, including the new search application and the single sign-on process. All told, this has not been a trivial thing. If you look at the entire body of work, we have expended more than $800,000 in reserve funds over the last 2 years to get all of this work done. And the clock really started. Um, you may recall that we finished or mostly finished the recorder's interface for e-submission, and then after that we have been working on the submitter interface, and then we updated our administrative applications, and right on down the line up until where we are now with the release of the search application and the the payment application that operates behind that, as well as the user authentication system that provides for the change from individual user registration to organization registration. That has been a big deal. We've reported to the Finance Subcommittee and the ESS Coordinating Committee, and in many respects to the Standards Subcommittee every step of the way through that process. This report really is just an opportunity to take a step back and look at the whole picture and see what we have done over the last 2 years. Um, One of the things that I do want to bring your attention is that there is going to be a small phase 3 of the outside development project that we have done. Basically, all those things that I referenced earlier, where there might be a glitch or unforeseen workflow that doesn't quite work the way we expected it to as we develop that new application, there are some loose ends that need to be tied up. Sometime in the next week or so, I'll be asking Nancy and other members of the ESS Coordinating Committee to convene a teleconference meeting of the ESS Coordinating Committee to approve one additional work authorization that would extend through the end of this calendar year to allow us to address those loose ends that need to be addressed. So um, at this point, I can't tell you, what is the to-do list or what are the things that we're going to do. We're kind of pulling through everything right now to set a priority list. But in the next week or so, I would anticipate having that done and then making this request to the ESS committee so that we can move forward and have the authority to finish up some of these things as we get to the end of the calendar year. And as the standards subcommittee, I just wanted you to be aware that process was underway. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, we're moving on. So, um, at the uh, May meeting of the ESS Coordinating Committee, um, the committee uh, asked us, maybe the right way to say it is directed us to research and come up with a plan on how we could implement a fraud notification or a fraud monitoring, fraud prevention type of a project on behalf of all of the counties. Um, some of the recorders were aware that individual service providers were offering their products and services to set up a system like that. Since we are a multi-county system, we were asked um, um, uh, to uh, to consider how we might do such a thing within the context of this our statewide system. So we've given some thought to that. I'm not going to say we put any numbers to this from a budget perspective, but we have considered, some approaches that we could take on how it might work. And we wanted to share that with you today. I see that Jamie has joined us from Adams County. She can join in the conversation as well, but she's been one of the principal advocates for doing something like this. And I would maybe just start with a little bit of background to say, well, how did we think about this and what's the basis for how we might move forward? And I think the first thing that we considered is, how can we leverage the Iowa land record system uh, to um, to permit this type of a thing to occur. And the thing is that someone basically would be able to provide us with some sort of information that exists within the Iowa land record system that could then be monitored. And then if some action took place, such as a recording that might be associated with a particular person or piece of property, that they could be asked to be notified whenever any event like that happen. Well, um, one approach that you should take is you should say, well, let's just, set up a separate service, and people should just go to it and enter information, and then it should just operate as a separate application. Uh, Another approach, uh, which is what we're presenting here, is to leverage something that we have created and that already exists, to see if it could be modified or have an additional feature added to it, that would provide that kind of fraud prevention activity. And that system is the individual user registration for the new search application. So when someone comes to us and says, I would like to have access, I may not be a real estate professional, but I want to have access to the Iowa land record system. I want to be able to look up my own records. I want to be able to look up the records of my parent or grandparent. And so um, that system is going to already exist. And so in order to access that system, the user is going to have to identify themselves. There'll be a certain degree of due diligence, not over overkill, but some measure of validation of their identity as they set up their application. It's not a self-registration system, and in a manner similar to um, any other user, they will be able to look up land records. They'll be able to look up their own records, their parents' records, their grandparents' records, friends and family, and they'll be able to see the conveyance documents that have been recorded. And so, as a part of that process, then uh, the question would be, how would we set up the notification system? Well, um, conceptually, this is not what the actual workflow might end up being, but conceptually, it would be a situation where they would go into the Iowa Land Record Search application as an individual user. They would look up the records to verify, um, that this is my deed. This is the conveyance document associated with my property, and they would be able to identify that, and they'd be able to look up the book and page or the document reference number, the date of recording, and we could provide them with some type of an interface to flag that record to say, if anything happens related to this document or this property, I would like to be notified of it. And since they've already given us their email address and their other contact information through their application to be a user of the system, then we wouldn't really have to go through any additional steps to identify them. We'd already have that information. And then what would happen is that we would say, okay, we'll keep an eye on that. So then the next question after that is, well, what events will happen that we will monitor. Um, and so if you look at different types of notification systems, one methodology that's used is to say name. So if anybody records anything with this name, then I want to be notified. And the presumption is that that name would alert them that somebody out there is using that name, and it should be monitored in some way, or a further investigation would be appropriate. Not that we would do that, but they would be in a position then to do that. Um, a significant difference, I would say, is that we are a statewide system, and if your last name is Smith or Jones or whatever, if you set up a monitoring system based on that surname and it was a statewide monitoring system, you might be getting a lot of junk notifications that really aren't going to help you that much. So that is a consideration. I'm not saying you can't do it that way, but it is something for us to think about. But another way to do it would be to say, okay, that document that they found is specifically associated with that county and that piece of property, and essentially they could flag that document. And if any subsequent document was recorded relating to that previously recorded document, then perhaps the notification should be based on that. And one way that could be done is through associated references. So if a new conveyance document is recorded and the submitter provides the reference back to the previous document, that could be the basis for notification because as counties enter those associated references, they would be transferred to our language as well, and we could be monitoring for that specific type of information and then provide a notification based on that document. The details have to be worked out, and we haven't put a budget to it yet, and there are options that we can consider. But the basic idea is not to create a whole brand new system, but to leverage the system that we'll already have in place for registration to use the individual search application as the basis for identifying who the person is. And then within that, then we could set up some tools for um, being able to set up a notification system of some kind. So the purpose in bringing it up today is that we know that many of you, and I heard a rumor that the association voted on a resolution to give support to this idea. We wanted to share the draft version of the concept to you and welcome your input. I, I, I would share with you that we did have a meeting yesterday with members of the ESS Executive Committee, and this was discussed. And one of the things that was discussed is, would this associated reference thing really work? Um, and my response was, yes, I do think it would be if everybody was committed to, making sure those associated references were entered in the recorder's index. But at the same time, there was some support for not totally walking away from the idea of some kind of a name notification as well. So I'm not giving you the message that that's off the table. I think everything's on the table. We just wanted to share this concept with you today. I'm seeing a note um, that uh, you're looking at the wrong screen. You should have page 23 in front of you. Um, and if I need to change that, I can. Um, and in your materials, you should be looking at page 23. So if I need to stop my share and change that to get that fixed, I can certainly do that. Give me just a moment. Okay. So you should now have, if you weren't already, you should have page 23 up. I am looking at I'm currently looking at page 23. I'm sharing my screen, so okay, very good. So this is a memo that I prepared for you, and the first four paragraphs of the memo relate to fraud prevention. Um, yes, thank you, Jolene. I know you have to step away, and for your comment about the um, the vote at summer school. Are there any other comments or questions about this? Okay, well, let's just say that we're going to continue to work on this concept. I'm going to be frank and candid with you all that we do have some other big picture priorities that we have to do from a development perspective. But I think there should potentially a path forward that would reduce the amount of creating brand new work because we already have this individual search system in place. I see that Jamie's entering a comment, so I want to pause there for that. And if anybody else have a comment or question, please feel free to jump in. The question that Jamie has entered is: would you have the option to select by counties? And there is potential for that. So if you flagged a particular document, that would by definition be flagging because that document was recorded in a particular county, and so we would have the unique code value of that, and we wouldn't be searching the entire statewide database. We'd just be keeping our eye on that record. If there was a name, that if the basis of the search was or the flag for the notification was based on name, then that could be narrowed to one or more specific counties. So I don't want to lead you to believe that that can't be done. It's just a matter of setting it up and stepping through the logic to make sure it's done. Uh, uh, I also want to try to be in a position where um, we want the notification system to be effective. The incidence of fraud, because of the way our system is worked up, is set up, and has a lot of eyes looking at it, does a great deal to minimize and prevent fraud from happening. And I wouldn't take the position that a fraud notification system or a record notification system is the cure-all for preventing fraud, but it should help. And so we want to try to structure it in the most sensible and effective way possible. So, okay. All right. Then at the bottom of the page here in this particular memo, I also wanted to bring your attention. This is again on page 23, the last paragraph. We've also been having conversations with the Society of Land Surveyors of Iowa, and they have had an ongoing interest in getting more surveys and plats from a historical basis online, that is digitized and then loaded into the system so that they can access them without necessarily having to go to the plat books in the individual recorder's offices. And that seems to be consistent with the mission of Iowa Land Records. So the question is, how do you do that? And that is something that we are discussing with them, and that also might be a means to leverage our associated reference system. So, I want to just give you an alert and share with you that we have had those conversations with them, and that we probably are going to set up some type of a joint working group with the surveyors organization, and the idea would be to come up with a project plan and a budget, uh, and at some point, we'd be touching your offices where we would be asking for access to some of those records, and then setting up a process for digitizing them. Um, and hopefully doing it in a way that would preserve the integrity of the record and not disrupt your office very much. And all of those things would have to be figured out. Um, but there definitely is interest on the part of them, and um, one of the things that we came discussed, that they would really like to see happen with the survey and plat records, and also I think corner certificates and other records that they record, is to begin doing more to index the associated references for related documents. And that's something I'll talk about when we get into the policies and procedures discussion. So, um, So Sue Meyer has entered a comment saying that they have used ARPA funds and scanned almost all of our plats. I have 6 books left to do myself, but it went well and we were working on back indexing them. So that is fantastic. And that's the kind of project that we would love to see happen. I know the surveyors would love that. So when we can get those into our land records, I know you'll have some happy surveyors, Sue. And I think the idea would be to do that, pretty much for every county. Um, and so, that is the main challenge. You say, well, I'd love to do that, but, how am I going to pay for it? And so we're trying to identify means that provide some resources for this. And then we'd also need to come up with some standard procedures that we could use with everybody so that, that we were handling the records in a safe and appropriate way. So thank you for that offering, sir. I appreciate your comment there. I think that's all I have to report on those two issues. Again, are there any other questions that you'd like to present? If not, then we will move on. And we're looking at the action items on the agenda. We did schedule this meeting officially from 10 to 12:30. Maybe we can get done by noon if we move efficiently, but um, we have several items coming up that we would like to ask you to take action on. And, um, and thereafter, we're going to maybe take a 5-minute break and then jump into some of our general non-action discussion items. So the next item that is on the agenda is an update to Chapter 7. And there are several different components to this. And I'll preface it by saying that in the General Assembly last year, we advanced a proposal to clarify the authority of Iowa Land Records and ESS to establish a terms of service, that is, to set up its rules on how people access it and how they use the system. Um, Largely because there were people out there, organizations out there that were not complying with our rules and basically abusing the system with fictitious identities or false IP addresses, and really some of the driving forces behind why we have made changes in our user registration system from a self-registration system to an application and organization-based process. That essentially has already been approved in terms of the previous changes that we made to Chapter 7, where pretty much throughout the policies and procedures in Chapter 7, we added references of organizations in addition to individuals. And that pretty much covered that issue, but it didn't really resolve the question of, how strong or sturdy is our statutory authority to do that. Uh, our bill did not get passed last year, not because there wasn't support for it. We ran out of time. It got tied up with some other issues in the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and the clock ran out. So what we said to our stakeholder groups and to the ESS committee is that we're going to go back to the drawing board and see if we can figure some other alternative. We think that if we went back to the legislature this year, we'd have a chance of passing something. But we said instead we're going to take a look at some options. Well, we did that. And one of the things that we discovered is that there was an element of Chapter 22 in the Iowa Code that actually addresses the issue that we were concerned about. And it's a provision that basically says that if you are a geographic based database system, which we are, because that's what property information is all about, is geographic based, it clearly says in that section of the code that if you have a system like that, that you do have the authority to set up your terms of service. And so our thought has been recently um, that, you know, if we just make a cross reference to that code section, that probably will address most of our issues and concern. So what we are doing in this very first section of Chapter 7 is creating that cross reference to essentially declare that we are that type of geographic based information system, and therefore we think it applies, and that is what we would hang our hat on going forward. I will tell you that we're still having some ongoing conversation with our legal counsel. We've also notified all of our stakeholder organizations that this is an option that we intend to pursue. Um, and the um, the uh, the the opportunity is there for them to express any concerns to us to decide whether to move forward with it or not. Uh, Census is informing me in the chat pod that chapter 7 is not on the screen. I am looking at page 24 of the packet of materials, and if that is true, I can once again I can stop sharing and I can share the screen again and see if I can make sure that that is visible. So you should now be able to um, see chap or page 24. And so the first section that is amended would be section 7.2 of the policies and procedures that adds in the reference to section 22.2 4A of the Iowa Code. Then in the next section, 7.3, we did identify that we had missed a few of the references um, 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 relating to individuals and organizations. So we're making a modification to that. And the other thing that is happening in this section is that um, in our policies and procedures, we did not lay out how the maximum usage limits apply to the individual users, not the organization users. Um, and because of that omission, I would just say that we've already coded the individual user system when we turn it on, so that an individual would be limited um, uh, to 10 documents per day. An important clarification that I would add is that whether you're an organization user or an individual user, there really is no limit on the number of searches you do. You could sit at your desk and search all day, and there is no limitation on that. The only limitation is how many images you view and download. We've used 120 for most of our organization users as our standard or as our guide. Um, and based on the surveys that we have done in communication with the stakeholder groups, then it suggests that they are quite okay overall with the 120 limit. And you'll see that we have built into our policy proposal for you today that we do have the ability in certain circumstances to give temporary permission for an organization to exceed that limit. Um, and it's just that the the we had not been specific about
So it's
this
Lisa.
going
I'm jumping
forward.
in here. There's nothing being displayed on the screen.
Okay. Let me try again. How about now?
No. That blue screen is really pretty, but if for anyone who's old enough, remember when TV used to go off? It kind of reminds me of that.
Well, I apologize for that. From what I am looking at, I'm definitely sharing the PDF document with the packet of materials. Let me try one more time. See if I can get it to work. Tell me what you can see now.
ESS 7.7, page
Awesome.
25.
All right, very good. Apologies to everybody for that. So, just to quickly review, the very first section of the amendment to Chapter 27 would relate to this reference to Code Section 22.2. Then the next section would reference but modify some of the language on the 120 document limit to organizations, because that's what it's really intended to do. And then we're filling in the blank in our policy to more clearly express that we do have this policy with regard to individual users, and that we have shared it with our stakeholders, and we believe this is consistent with what we've been communicating in our various focus groups and other communications in recent history. Then the next thing is that while we have done the coding work for the new search application, we really didn't have any corresponding policy that explained how our application process worked. And we felt like since we're a public organization, we need to be transparent about how we're doing that. And so we have decided that we're going to propose a new section of Chapter 7, Section 7.7, that addresses the application procedure. Um, and so in that application, it does lay out some specific things, such as the information that we request of them, their identification information. If they're an organization in particular, we ask them to share with us your filing with the Secretary of State's office, or the Secretary of State in your state if you're out of state. If you're in Iowa, we'll be asking them to provide us with a trade name document if they have recorded one in your county. And all of this is really just to um, authenticate who the applicants are. We want to make sure that the users of our system are legitimate, and we are planning to do more due diligence than we have done historically, especially with respect to the search application. Um, we're requiring them to provide accurate information about them as both organization or as individuals, and so that is explicitly laid out as well. Um, and we reserve the right to verify and validate that the information provided is correct and accurate. So the whole point of this is just to give notice. We do have an application process. Here is the process that it is. Here's where you can find the application form. Here's the information that we're going to ask for. And we do reserve the right, and we're telling them right out of the gate that we reserve the right to verify and validate any information to provide, and we're reserving the right to conduct a background or review the background of any organization, um, and to determine whether they may be engaged in activities that violate our terms of service. Um, Section 7.7, subsection 4, relates to um, disclosing to the applicant that we may not accept your application. And so, um, um, in sort of a due process, if we're going to reject an application as a public organization, we need to declare, well, what is the basis that if you were rejected my application to access your system, what would that be? And so items A through E are intended to enumerate more specifically what those reasons for denying an application to be. So if they submit false or fictitious information, or if the information they provide about their business registration is inaccurate, if we are generally unable to identify and authenticate the organization, that would be a reason for declining. And if we believe that, based on our research, that they are engaged in fraudulent or illegal activity or activities that are contrary to other parts of our terms of use, we reserve the right to decline them. And that is the enumeration that was specified. So here's our application process. We have the right to not accept you into the system. And if we do that, it's going to be for one of the following reasons. Um, and there is a provision that says that there will be notice given to them, and that they have the right to an appeal. So we will have an appeal process that's set up, and it has to be submitted to our support email address, and it will be directed to the designated site administrator to make a determination about that, which right now is me, but it could be any other member of our team. And so this is just a part of the due process of this is our application process. If we deny you, here are the reasons why we might deny you. And if we do deny you, you do have the right to an appeal. Uh, to carry the thought one step further, then we might say, well, we observed you as a user or a user in your organization or your organization as a whole, you're violating our terms of use. You're not following our policy, and we reserve the right to revoke your access to our applications. And then we um, outline in subsection 2 of 7.8, these are the reasons why we might revoke your access to the system. If you're creating multiple user accounts to circumvent our rules, if you fail to maintain current and accurate information about yourself or your organization, if you fail to um, um, pay your required fees for the e-submission service, or failure to pay other authorized fees, that might be the basis for it. If you if we cannot communicate with you via email, one of the requirements of our terms of service is that we be able to communicate with you as a user or as an organization via email. You need to be able to accept our service notices and even our periodic communications to our users. And if we can't communicate with you, then we really can't keep you as an applicant or as a member of the system. Other reasons for revocation might include an IP address that is false or located outside of the United States. If you're engaged in activities that are deemed to be illegal, we can terminate your access to the system. If you are using information in the Iowa record system that is not for your professional use or for your business purpose, but you're just trying to compile data so that you can resell it, we're basically saying, we are not going to put up with that any longer in the new system. So again, due process disclosure, we reserve the right to revoke access to the system. Here are the reasons why we may do that as a matter of being transparent with everybody. Then let's see. In 7.8.3, this is just a reiteration that um, that um, the use or access to the system is conditional. It's not a right. You are being given a privilege to access the system, and you're required to comply with all of our policies, including our privacy policy and the other usage policies that we have in place. And um, here we're also indicating to them, what action we might take, and the way our system is set up, the most likely revocation action that we would take is simply to deactivate their access to the system. And that could be done for individuals or it could be done for entire organizations. We also have set it up so that um, if you were an e-submitter and you were an e-submitter in good standing, but you were violating our terms of use on the search service, we could deactivate your organization just for access to the search application, but you could continue to be an electronic filer. I'm not saying that we would do that if they really were a bad actor, but we do have an ability to differentiate between the two types of services that they're using. Um, we are also disclosing that to them in section 7.8.4. What are the things, sort of like the progressive discipline, what might we do? We might give you a warning. We might blacklist an individual user. We might temporarily deactivate your account, or we might do it permanently. We might block your IP address so you can't access it from your location anymore. And we also reserve the right to take legal action, which really isn't that much different than what we are currently doing. We're just being more open and disclosing what it is exactly we are doing. Um, let's see. This next section is about where we will give notice to the organization administrator. And again, if we revoke, so we can deny your application, and there's an appeal process for that. If we revoke your application, this provides for a method of appeal as well. It's not an elaborate appeal process. We're not trying to be a magistrate or an administrative law judge. We're just providing an appeal process in the event that they um, do it. Then, as I mentioned to you earlier, we do have the ability to set the image view limit. So the standard for an organization is 120 per day for image views, unlimited searches. For individuals, it's 10 images a day, unlimited searches. And uh, at the same time, we do have the ability to deviate from that. And so Section 7.9 is all about describing if you're an organization and you have a legitimate reason for asking to exceed those limits for a temporary activity, um, uh, not necessarily to download large quantities of information so you can build up your database, but to complete a research activity, we can grant that allowance. So if you're a user or an organization in good standing, you might be able to do that. And then what we try to do in this section is, first of all, we tell them we're going to decide it on a case-by-case basis, and then we enumerate the types of reasons why we uh, will grant that allowance, and we put some guardrails around it in terms of clarifying that it's temporary, that um, it's not for an unlimited amount of time. It has to be for a special purpose, and that's what we try to describe in items A through H. And then in section 7.9, subsection 4, um, as we're just simply disclosing that we're going to maintain a record of the organizations that we grant this access to for reporting purposes and to monitor any potential misuse that might occur. Whoa, I know that was a long dialogue there, but that is what we're doing with Chapter 7. I guess I would wrap the description up to just say that, uh, this document itself, we made a special effort to provide it to the stakeholder groups so that they have an opportunity to review it before we take action. My request to you today is to give your approval to this to advance to the ESS Coordinating Committee, who's going to be meeting, I believe, on August 8th. And what we'll do is, continue communications with our stakeholder groups and our users, and there may be some amendments or changes that are considered based on the input that we receive, with the idea that we would take a final version of this to the coordinating committee for final approval at their August meeting. I'll take a breath. What questions or comments do you have? And can everybody still see the document? I am looking at the bottom of page 30 in your packet right now. Any comments or questions?
I think it looks good, Phil. Are you looking for a motion?
I would definitely entertain a motion to approve and advance to the full ESS committee. But
I will.
I want to allow for discussion if there is any.
Sure. I'm happy to make the motion. This is
Uh,
Joan.
Joan makes the motion to accept and approve and the proposed amendments to Chapter 7 and to advance to the ESS Coordinating Committee. Is there a second? And I have a second in the chat pod from Jane Schultz. Thank you, Jane. Is there any further discussion or comment? I see Katie entering a comment in the chat pod. Any further comments? I don't want to leave anybody out. Any comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Katie. All right, if there are no comments, I would request a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or enter aye in the chat pod.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I will pause just a moment. Are all these votes in? Is there anyone opposed? Very well. Thank you very much, everybody. I know that was a long-winded discussion, but as we got into it, as we're rolling out the system, there are just certain things you do as a public organization to give notice to people about what you do, what the basis of it is, and I won't be surprised if we get some input from the stakeholder groups, but this puts us in a position to move forward with that. So, thank you so much. I am moving on in the agenda now, and we're looking at a proposed amendment to Chapter 3 relating to associated references. And some of this ties back to our previous discussions in April and even meetings prior to that, where we have advanced this for review and comment. And I think we are at a point now where we should make some decisions. There is one new element to this, which I will go over, but most of this is actually the same as what you've seen in previous meetings. The first thing that I want to highlight with this is that uh, one of the things that we got out of the focus group discussions with our users as we were developing the new search application is how highly they value the ability to access associated documents through the system. In fact, I would say one of the features that we are offering in the new application that seems to be most liked, that is, gets the most comments or gets the most favorable reviews, and I'm not talking scientifically here. I'm speaking from an anecdotal perspective. But one of them is how much they appreciate the associated reference feature, and one of the reasons why they would like it, or why they would like the old legacy application, you can, if there is an associated reference present in the database, you can find the associated reference. But if you want to actually see the associated reference, that is the index details and the document image, you essentially have to run a new search for that document. In the new application, if you see that there is an associated reference, you can click on a and it will take you directly to the index information for that associated reference, and you can open the image if it is present in the database. Um, and I just hear over and over again how much that is appreciated, and I think generally what we have heard is how much the user base values the associated reference feature, and that they would actually like to see it used more. Um, so the question is begged, how do we do that? And one of the things that we would say that we are trying to be clear about is that the value of an associated reference goes up if it's bilateral. And bilateral, it means that if a new satisfaction of mortgage gets filed, the satisfaction of mortgage has a reference back to the original mortgage, but also, there should be a reference from the original mortgage, at least one generation back to the recently filed satisfaction of mortgage document. Um, we are not saying that um, there should be an associated reference to every possible preceding document about that particular property. That is not what we're saying. Bilateral means bilateral. It means that um, we want to see, and what would be valuable to the users is the most immediately preceding uh, reference that makes sense. Okay, um, and so there are ways that that can be done programmatically. There are ways that it can be done manually, and we're just saying as an our land record system that is what we were shooting for. Then the next thing that really came out in all of the discussions that we have had with recorders, with you and other recorders, has been that um, it's not the job of the recorder to do research. So if a document comes in and it doesn't have a reason to have an associated reference, like the release of the previous mortgage, right? That there's a reason why you do that. Um, um, but uh, but if a document comes in and there's not a direct functional requirement to do that, it's not the job of the recorder to go back and do the research to figure out what that previously recorded document is. However, the idea was advanced that if it's present in the document that is the current document that is being recorded, if there is an associated reference to a prior document, it's right in the document, and you don't have to do any research. Then, okay, we'll index that. That's kind of the idea there. So the reference, this language here, that qualifies it to say if present in a document would be kind of a universal rule. And so if users want to see associated references in the recorder's index, they have to help. They have to provide it. And so I thought that was a very fair position to take from a recorder's point of view. And so this latest version, and I think the previous versions that I've shared with you, include this requirement. Um, so, all right, well, what else is there? Well, in our current policy, there are already references to index references between conveyance documents and declaration of value documents. is also a provision relating to having associated references between mortgages and satisfaction of mortgage documents. There is already there are already references between um, tax liens and lien releases. That is basically pre-existing policy, and those are enumerated in items A through Z or A through C. You can see the language that has been added basically reflects that idea of bilateralism, but otherwise it's more or less existing policy. Item A is changed from just being limited to declaration of value documents to actually to previously recorded conveyance documents. And I think that was the main issue when we talked about the idea of if it is present in a document. Um, the recorders, I think, clearly said we don't want to do the research on that. But if it's already there, if the submitter already put it there, and I don't really have to do any research on it, then it's okay. So then the declaration of value issue got moved to a different section, and I guess we got eliminated entirely because there is no recording of declaration of value documents. So it was somewhat of an artifact that didn't have any meaning in the previous or even the current version of the policy. Then moving on, the idea of having an associated reference between associated documents. They may not be a satisfaction and a release or a deed and a previous deed, um, but they're associated with each other. And the idea of, if you have, a document that you just filed and it's correcting a previous document, um, or if it's a re-recording of a previous document, there should be an associated reference in the index about that somehow, somewhere. And so that the intent is there to clarify that. Then item E is a reference to groundwater hazard statement. So if there is a conveyance document and there is a groundwater hazard statement that is associated with it, there should be an associated reference to that. The new item, this is the one new item from what you've seen previously, is this came out of discussions with the surveyors, um, and they really liked associated references, um, and so based on those conversations, the idea is being advanced here to include that in the list of associated references that should be in the recorder's index. So if you've got a new plat that gets filed and it's associated with a previous plat, or if there's a new corner certificate associated with a previous corner certificate, and so on, then those should be indicated as well. And when we met with the surveyors group, we explicitly asked them, well, the recorders don't want to look this up. So are you willing to do the research and include the associated reference to the prior documents in your recorded documents, what you submit to the recorder? Um, and we didn't do a survey of the entire membership, but we essentially were meeting with the executive committee of the Land Surveyors Board of Directors, and they said yes, they felt they should support that. Um, and so that's where it is. The reference to the unique code value is just an internal reference that we use in our land records, and that's something that you should have to worry about. That's something for us to work out with your local service provider. Um, I think one of the ideas here is, again, we want to be prospective. We want to make clear that what is already is, and there's no intent or expectation that anybody try to go back in time and fill in all the gaps. This is a day forward idea, and so um, the the proposal is to make it effective January 2024, and you know we I know that your users would greatly appreciate this. Um, and we tried to structure it in a way so that you don't have to be in a position to do the research. But if the information is present, then the idea of incorporating it uh, would be uh, well received. And again, we're looking day forward, starting in 2024, not trying to go backwards in time. Another monologue. So, questions about this? Um, Comments about it. Sumaira is typing. Um, Thank you. I won't read it, but Susan entered a comment in the chat pod for your reference. Thank you very much, Sue, for your comment. Thank you, Deb, for your comment. I would say the intent here is to take this proposal, if it's approved by you, to the ESS committee for action at their August meeting. Thank you, Jolene, for your comment. Are there questions? If not, a motion would be in order. And the motion would be to accept and approve the associated reference policy and advance for consideration by the ESS committee. There is a motion in the chat pod by Joan McCommon to approve. Is there a second? And seconded by. Can I get a different second? Because Deb, kind of the sections really need to be by a committee member. So sorry about that. Okay, well, Katie, thank you. Katie's got it. So we have a motion by Joan and seconded by Katie. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. Please either say aye or enter it in the chat pod. All those in favor say aye. I have an aye from Jolene and Katie. Anyone else? Thank you, Jane. And thank you, Deb. Any further votes? Then I would ask if there are any opposed. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, I will declare the motion to be approved. Thank you very much, everybody. We're doing very well on time, so let's keep rolling at once. I think we have this one last item to do with regard to, um, maybe we have two action items left. Yeah, we have two more to go before we take a short break. So let's move on then to the next section, which relates to parcel identification numbers. Um, my intro to this is that, uh, if you go back to the previous history, last time we actually talked about this was in 2016, so we're talking 7 years ago. Um, and actually, it goes back deeper than that. If you look at the history, the original policy was adopted in 2013. So it's just a decade now. But the idea back in 2013 was, we understand that there is value in uh, incorporating parcel identification numbers in the recorder's index, particularly with respect to, real property information, conveyance documents in particular, and just from being involved in PRIA and uh, the other organizations that really support the idea of tying different databases together to gain a richer access to information about property. Parcel IDs are really the gold standard that everybody was looking to use. And I remember way back in the very beginning in 2004, discussions with representatives of the Bar Association and people who are participating in our planning committees, expressing a desire that, boy, we hope we can go in that direction. Well, it's almost 20 years after that discussion. And then we talked about it in 2013, and we kind of said, okay, this is the year we're going to really going to say we're doing this. And after a few years, it became apparent that, it just was not a strongly motivating thing. And so rather than leave it on the books, as sort of a requirement, we changed some of the language to say, well, one practical, please everybody try to do this. And then we can we can go forward sort of an incremental basis. And now we're 7 years later, and kind of in the same 6 or 7 years later, we're kind of in the same boat where not a lot has been happening, and we have. PRIA and other organizations really giving a lot more information and emphasis to tying up with geographic information systems. And pretty much the way it is done is through partial identification number. That is the keystone in most of the other databases. So um, if we want to do that, if we want to see that advance in Iowa, we've got to move beyond a optional thing and move to a requirement. I'm aware that some counties do this already, and we're greatly appreciative of that, but many do not yet. Um, so, the real fundamental proposition on the table today that I would ask the standard subcommittee to consider, um, and we have talked about this before in several prior meetings, but this would essentially move us from an option to a mandate. That the expectation would be that every county, day forward, not looking back in time, but day forward, would begin to incorporate partial IDs into their index databases. You can see that this is written so that it would be effective January 1, 2024. Um, uh, it does represent change. Um, and I appreciate that very much. Um, but there is value in doing this. And if everybody did it, it would have even more value. So I'll stop there. I felt like it had been long enough to in between to say, are we ready to do this? Um, my opinion would be yes, we should be ready to do this as a system and as a group of counties. But that really is up to you. So I defer to you for your concern, and we'll see where the discussion goes.
Gosh, you guys are quiet. This is Sue and Clayton.
Thanks, you, Sue.
So I'm currently on a PRIA work group concerning this exact information. And the majority of the people that were polled by PRIA are now entering this information into their systems. And one of the points that was made is aggregating real estate recording information and the PIN can promote greater transparency in property ownership and transactions. This can be particularly useful in reducing fraud and improving accountability in real estate markets. I told the work group it was their job to win me over on this information, and they pretty much have. I'll shut up now.
Jane has asked a question. Does this mean the preparer is required to include the PIN on the document? I would say this particular policy um, does not make that mandate. That may be something that, in fact, I think it does come up in a review of some of the document formatting requirements that is on the discussion list for later in the agenda. Um, I think the expectation would be that basically, sort of similar to what we talked about for the associated references, is that if it's present, it should be indexed. Um, and I do know that there are some conversations, about how in some counties that may be easier to do than others because the recorder's office may use the same service provider as the other office holders, like the auditor, and there can be an exchange of information that way that would facilitate making that happen. Um, but I think the intent would be that if those connecting points are there to access the information collaboratively with the other office, then that would be a wonderful way to do it. But otherwise, you know, um, I don't think that there necessarily is an expectation that the recorder do research on that. Um, if it is not readily available, and yeah, I think in that case, um, it would be it would be good if the preparers were assisting with that. And so, but half the equation is the ability has to be there to put the pin in the index, and the willingness to ensure that if it is present at least, or if there's some reasonable means to access it. Um, I don't think this goes so far as to say that that you have to do the research yourself to go get it. Um, but being able to do it and doing it if you can, yeah. I mean, again, if you go to 3.10 sub 2, the way it's written, it just simply says each county index system shall provide for archiving the information. And that's really what it says. Um, other comments or questions? Talk to me. Deb is entering a comment. Jane and Deb are entering a comment. I will stand by. Any other comments on the phone or otherwise? So Deb has said, I heard Sue say that pre-up poll indicated many recorders don't use PIN. What was communicated after she said that? Um, um, Sue, would you like to repeat that?
No, it's they do use the PIN, and then one of the statements was that aggregating real estate recording information and PINs can promote greater transparency in property ownership and transactions. This can be particularly useful for reducing fraud and improving accountability in real estate markets. Nationally, this is the trend, is to enter this information. Our assessor provides our office with the information, and we enter it.
Okay. Thank you, Jolene. Um, do you feel like we need to add something to this similar to what we had in the associated reference document? Would it be more palatable or maybe more effective if in the appropriate place here um, that it would be entered if present on the document? Or do we need to qualify it maybe further to say, yeah, or if accessible to the recorder's office, or if present on the document, meaning or implying that, if they had the means to get it electronically from the auditor's office somehow, that would be another example of it. Um, and would that make more sense if we said it that way? So and one thing I would want to clarify, I'm looking at Sherry's comment, and that is that, the idea, we know that parcel identification numbers change. And so the, when something happens with a property, there may be a change. The intent is not to maintain a running update of that in the recorder's index. The intent is for it to be a historical reference, right? Um, so I'm not sure I know or can answer the question about, you know, um, what if it came along from another office? I have, and there may be things that I don't know, and I acknowledge that, but um, my impression has been that, the other office, specifically the auditor, is the authority on what the parcel identification number is. So, if it's a mistake, um, and generally speaking, I'm not sure what the actual liability would be if there, is an error um, in the recorder's index, because in this case, it doesn't really have anything to do with the ownership or the role of providing public notice. It may just simply be a factual error, which um, uh, already happens today, not just on parcel IDs, but there are errors in the documents, and they still get recorded, and the recorder really is not liable for information. But I understand what you're saying. The idea would be that um, uh, that if the auditor gives you a number and it's wrong, you don't want to be accountable for that because they gave it to you and they are the authority. So I understand where you're coming from. Sue has entered a comment that says our assessor provides the numbers to us for a document and then we update our index info with that. We have so many splits of property I can't keep up with pins. And there are some additional comments being entered. And Joan said, I agree with Sue. Our office does not have enough staff to do it after all intake, and if it is not on the record. So I am hearing a strong vote, not vote, but expression of opinion that that the standard should be if present on the document, if present on the record being recorded. Is that would that be a fair um, summary of kind of where everybody's at? Okay. Well, we have well-established standards. Um, well-established standards that the preparer, the submitter, is responsible for the content of the document, not the recorded. And we've heard the phrase many times: "The recorders record." So, what I would suggest is, what I would suggest in this particular case is I would recommend that we defer action on this one, and with the understanding that you have given me direction to modify the language in this draft to clarify that the information will be indexed if it is present on the document. Um, is that an agreeable action step here? Because I think you're making an important suggestion here, and rather than make it up on the fly, I think deferring until your next meeting, for example, and coming back with an updated version, uh, would be a very sensible thing to do, and it would be a step forward. And I would be favorable to that for sure. Um, any Is there anybody that disagrees with what I just said? Okay. Then I would like to just move on and just take in a moment, we'll take a short break. But uh, the, the last action item on the agenda today is related to what I have described as sort of the consensus position. And we had several meetings back in April and May to talk about the formatting standards. We kind of went through the whole chapter, and these are the things that what I would describe as sort of technical modernization. Removing language that didn't make sense anymore in our world, like typewritten information, as an example, and then maybe creating some greater consistency by, removing the reference to pre printed text versus other text, um, and just establishing a standard 10-point guideline. I think what you did is kind of give emphasis to legibility, and in the case of a signature, make sure that it's clear and discernible, even if it might not be fully legible. Uh, and and generally speaking, I would just say that with regard to subsection one, uh, everybody seemed to be in agreement with that. We did make some last minute changes in terms of adding a reference to saying that, hey, documents shouldn't be taped together, things like that. And we kind of put back in an exception on apply to survey. After we thought about it, maybe that didn't make sense, so that was put back in. Um, but otherwise, we've been through several iterations of this, and this seems to be where we settled. And I think maybe in a previous message to the subcommittee, I had even said, well, we don't really intend to take action, but I changed my mind on that and said, if this really represents a consensus position, putting aside all of the other document formatting issues, why don't we go ahead and get some formal approval of this, with the understanding that where it goes from here is somewhat up to the coordinating committee, because it's not just a policy change; it would be a recommendation for a statutory change, and there are decisions still ahead, in terms of what would be included in the legislative program, and even whether or not this should be an association initiative or whether it should be under the ESS umbrella. But if there really is agreement about these changes in whatever form they are presented, um, I think it would be good to have the subcommittee just go ahead and give its stamp of approval, and then we'll figure out what to do with it after that. Those are my 2 cents, but this has not changed since you received the update way back in April. After several rounds of discussion, uh, I uh, I defer to the subcommittee um, about your thoughts on this at this point. And if you were going to make a motion, I would say it would be to approve and advance the ESS Coordinating Committee for consideration, um, in conjunction with other legislative priorities, something general like that. Any comments or motion? Okay, Joe Lynn moves to the motion, and I'll repeat it, as to approve the proposed amendment to Section 1 of 331-606B for future consideration as appropriate by the ESS Coordinating Committee. Jane has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye in voice or chat pod. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I just have to make the comment that we'll declare the motion approved. That, I know that there was some trepidation going into the whole formatting discussion, and I mean, this is sort of okay. We did have some pretty good agreement on these things, and I appreciate the effort that everybody put into this. I think they're good changes, and kind of reflect current expectations on doing business. So you guys did all that together, and I'm very grateful for your engagement in the topic. So thank you. Um, Technically speaking, we have a half hour left, and it was suggested to me that we have a very short break, but I would make a commitment to you that we're going to finish at 12:30 no matter what. So would you like to take just a couple minute break, um, and uh, and then reconvene? I can sit here and I can be ready to go, and we can just keep plowing through it if you would prefer that. But I think this is worth taking some time to discuss. So we'd like to spend a few more minutes with you. Emphasize that this is a discussion session, that none of the following items are being asked for any action. Uh, we've had them on the table for discussion and just review and contemplations going back to actually the end of our meeting in April of this year. And then I think I've maybe distributed them maybe once or twice in the interim period just to keep them front and center in everyone's minds. Um, and I would acknowledge that we're presenting some ideas here that maybe go beyond just a simple update of the formatting standards, but rather represent some potential changes in workflow. And I think I would want everybody to understand that the spirit in which they're being offered is to um, make things better for potentially for the submitters or customers and constituents, but maybe even be a benefit to recorders as well. And so we work through the conversation and see what everybody feels about it. I think the only thing I've kind of resisted isn't change. It's just that we want to be open to new things if it makes sense, and sort of try to steer away from well, we've always done it that way as the reason for not considering a change. So with that spirit in mind, let me go ahead and proceed. So. And again, I promise we will stop right at 12:30. So um, I thought we'd just run through the so-called homework real quickly and get comments and questions. This is substantive enough that I really would prefer to have in-person conversations, but we'll do what we can today, and with the understanding that we'll have opportunities to talk about it more going forward. I tried to order these and maybe the things that would be the easiest to the more difficult. I don't know if I've made a good prediction of that or not, but we're going to start with a proposed or draft suggested change to 321.606B subsection G. Okay, and that specifically refers to document a requirement says each document instrument presented for recording shall meet the requirements of Section 331, 606A, subsection 2. Well, that section of the code essentially says, a submitter is not supposed to, um, um, submit anything that has PII in it, like a social security number. We know that that still happens because, we're still running a redaction process. We didn't have to stop doing that. The the frequency of the actual redaction or the presence of PII is not that high anymore, but it still does happen. So we still have to check every document. But it would not be a correct statement to say that we encourage or even require a document that has PII in it to be rejected. And that is because we do have a comprehensive redaction process in place. We have a methodology in place so that recorders can flag a document and say, hey, watch out for this one. This has PII. Let's make sure it gets redacted before it gets posted on the website. And that's pretty much the standard operating procedure and has been for some time. And so it's there's a conflict in the code where you say, well, you can't record it if it's there, but we do. And the reason we do is that we have a solution in place. So why not clean this up in the code and say, yes, no, it shouldn't be recorded. But if you have a redaction process that is required by the Code of Iowa, then yes, you can record that document because it's being redacted for public access. So to me, this is more of a let's align the code with what current reality is, and not pretend that we want to or should be rejecting every document just because it may contain some PII. Okay, I've made my introductions. What do you think about this potential change for future consideration? Nancy and Melissa are entering a comment in the chat pod. So the idea is instead of saying shall, say, however, a document which includes personally identifiable information shall be recorded. You're suggesting that maybe it should say may be recorded. I see your point there. Melissa has asked, would you need to state that an unredacted copy is available upon request from the local county office? Um, we could do that. I'm not sure I would say that it is that we need to do that because I think the operation of the law clearly. I think there's even a cross reference to another section of the code uh, that says that clearly indicates that we don't have to redact the permanent archive version of that. So I would say no. I don't think that would be required. Um, so they are aware of the public. It would be published if requested. Um, Boy, I sure hope people understand that. We do include that in our communications. I don't know if we need to be that specific in this section of the code, but we're not taking action on this today. So let me just simply register that as a comment that we can include for future reference the next time we review this. So I appreciate that. So my two takeaway comments are maybe it said say may be recorded instead of shall, and then the suggestion that um, somehow, some way, we provide clarification of how the PII is being handled in the permanent record in the recorder's office versus the posting online. So, yeah, okay. And thank you, Katie, for your additional comment. Are there any other comments about this? I'm going to move on then. So the next section relates to index legend and cover sheet. I don't know if I would say this is the easiest one either, but none of these are totally straightforward. But in our previous work, as we were kind of going through some uh, uh, topics that we were conversations that we were having with the stakeholders, particularly the real estate section of the bar. One, and this actually came up in the context of groundwater hazard statements. Um, the the realization came that there really isn't anything in the code or in our rules or anybody's rules that says anything about a cover sheet or how it could be formatted. We've sort of had published a template that we've had out there since 2006 that people could use as a guide. The Bar Association has a template that they have in their wheelhouse that they suggest to people, and basically it generally corresponds to the things that we just talked about in subsection that we're going to talk about in subsection 2 of 331-606B about what has to be on the first page of the document. So the basic idea um, in this whole thing is to begin to consider, well, what really should we say? So the first set of changes. So the first thing I want to make sure I emphasize is that we just talked about subsection 1, and this particular version doesn't reflect any of those changes. So disregard subsection 1 here because we've already talked about that, but it begins to come into play when we start talking about subsection 2. And so we kind of know that there aren't many rules or guidelines about cover sheets, and generally cover sheets are intended to incorporate the information, or at least by practice, the information that is enumerated in subsection 2. So if we're going to make some policy about cover sheets, um, or even index legends, then what do we want to say about that? And so um, I want to um, um, just kind of run through this subsection 2 real quick, and just to sort of head it off at the pass, that in discussion that we had with a couple of recorders, and this came up in our executive committee meeting yesterday, that uh, the recorder may not need the instrument or the name of the taxpayer and the complete mailing address for indexing purposes, but there are other users or stakeholders who do need that information, and it's been pointed out to me it probably would be incorrect to strike that altogether. And I get that, and I think that certainly in a future version of this would be changed, because the reason it was suggested as a strike originally was because we were looking at, well, what does a recorder need to record? We weren't really thinking about other users. So I just want to acknowledge that very good commentary that I received, and that item B probably would be reinserted. The other thing I would just make sure everybody looks at is that there is a written explanation here for each change that has been suggested. So if you need a cross reference there, you might want to take a quick look at that. Um, the first strike through relating to the 3-inch margin, there is another part of this of the statute that addresses the 3-inch margin. So it really is somewhat redundant. So um, being the wordsmith that I sometimes can be, oh, it's already covered there. So in this change, I'm not striking the reference. I'm not striking the reference to the requirement of 3-inch margin. I'm just striking the reference to it. So it already exists elsewhere in the code. So it's somewhat redundant to put it here. Uh, the change in item A really is to shift away from um, just who might have prepared the document, which is very loosely defined. But in our e-submission application, we're referring to it more as the person who is best positioned to um, 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 the uh, the the fact that we're trying to connect with the person who best fits the
Hi,
application.
Phil. Yeah,
Uh,
so the screen is still showing the PII page. It hasn't moved to the
it's
next
still
page.
showing the PII page.
Yes.
Well, we have had some issues with sharing, haven't we? Let me stop sharing real quick and reshare. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so you should be looking at um, page um, page 45 is where I'm at. Is that what you see now? Okay, good. Thank you. So I was just talking about this earlier in terms of not eliminating the requirement, just eliminating the redundant cross-reference. The next one is not changing the reference to the preparer, but kind of moving in the direction of, asking for them who is best equipped to correct an error identified by the recorder. Who do we communicate with? Um, and so that is a change. I already talked about the fact that we probably need to keep the reference to the taxpayer and mailing system because the recorder may not need it, but other parties may need it. A return address, and the only clarification is to if the a return address is needed if the recording or if the document is submitted in physical form, because there are still processes in place to return physically paper documents that are submitted for recording, uh, but uh, we don't necessarily need a return address if it's electronically submitted. I can hear some people say to me, no, the standard should be the same whether it's electronically submitted or not. I get that comment. Um, so there is an argument to be made for consistency for the return address. Um, uh, I I maybe take a different point of view on that. There's some value in consistency, uh, but where is it really needed? It's mostly needed when there is a physical form. But comments received, and another one was that is a strike through here is item G, any address required by statute. I'm open to input on that, but I am not aware specifically of uh, a statute that requires an address that so maybe a stakeholder could identify that, but I haven't heard it yet, and that's why it's suggested as a possible strike through, but there may need to be a correction of that. Then item H, originally it just said full legal description of the parcel of the property if required, and um, and the reference to a parcel identification number if required. But what we really want to see from submitters is not you know, there a really good definition of the full legal description from the standpoint of what needs to be on the first page, and maybe what we really are saying is that we want to see the partial legal description information because that is the type of thing we ask for in an index legend, and we're looking for ways to aid the recorder in the recording process. Um, and that doesn't mean that we have eliminated the requirement that if the full legal description needs to be on a separate page, it says, and a page reference for the full legal description. So the intent really here is what does the recorder need to do indexing, and I think it could be very helpful to have that parcel location information. This is where the answer to the question that came up in the discussion of parcel identification number would be um, this doesn't make it a mandate. Um, it does say and keeps it in the same context as the original version of item H, but to enumerate separately the parcel identification number, but it is still, in this version at least, qualified by the reference to if applicable or required, and maybe that needs to be changed. And then quickly, the discussion that we had about associated references, um, um, it basically it is being a little bit more directive. It originally said a document or instrument number if applicable or required for statutory requirements if applicable, which is a little confusing to me. But really, to modernize this, it seems to me that that section is really talking about associated references. So why don't we just use that terminology directly? So that is the idea there. And then uh, the the again, I may have to modify this, but the reference to the information in the section is for the purpose of providing necessary information for recording. Um, uh, the uh, uh, clarification is really intended to say, this information is really for recording. It's not necessarily information that has any legal effect in the document. Um, and again, that is kind of intended to put the burden on the preparer to make sure it's your job to make sure the legal standards are required. The recorder is there to record. Now, let me pause and um, um, so Nancy's added a comment to saying that the code does require an address on a trade name form, so maybe that is what it is referring to. Um, and I don't know. I'm open to. Uh, yes, I got absolutely get what you're referring to with regard to paragraph C, and if that is true, then maybe that is an example, and maybe the language should be changed to something like any address required by statute, such as a trade name document, uh, as provided in section whatever the code it is. That would make some sense to me. Um, thank you. That's the first example I've heard about it. Anything that requires a trade name, and that seems very sensible to me. So let us capture that idea there. Um, and Okay, so let me stop there. We're going to run out of time, and this may be as far as we get in today's conversation. But uh, are there any other things that stand out for you, just in subsection two, that you would like to comment on? So you guys have made some very good and substantive comments on this, and we'll take that with us as we uh, maybe prepare an updated version of this. So thank you for that. Um, sure, is there any comment here? And Sarah is emphasizing the comment again that that there should be the same standard between a paper document and a traditional document. Um, the only thing I'm not going to argue with you about this. I don't want to get in any arguments. I have enough of those with other people. But one of the things I would maybe give reference to is that in the subsection one changes, there is one element of that where we made reference to a physical document. Um, so, you might want to go back and take another look at that as well. But I do understand what you're saying. The desire to keep the standards the same or as similar as possible. Um, okay. Very good. So I hear you. I got your comments on that. Then I want to just leave you with this and ask you to, we'll continue this as kind of a part of the homework. Is that um, in subsection three here um, is where we get into, okay, item section two talks about things that need to be on the first page. And item three begins to say, and there are different ways that you can do that. You can do that with a cover sheet. And for the first time, we'd actually have something in the code, if this were to be approved, that describe what a cover sheet is and what its function is. But it also introduces the idea, as we already do with survey instruments, the idea of maybe an index legend that could be included on the first page of a document as well. It might require some reformatting. It doesn't necessarily assume that an index legend could be in the top margin of the first page. Just basically says on the first page it would be approved. The issue of where it appears maybe is dealt with in one of the subsequent suggestions. But I would maybe just ask the subcommittee to consider, you know, if there was if there was a practice of using an index legend on the first page or even on the cover sheet itself, what are your feelings about that? So again, not to answer all those questions today, but I would just say that the comments that you've entered into the chat pod are the kinds of it's the kind of input that we were looking for. This whole homework is not intended to be okay, take it or leave it. These are discussion items. What do we think about them? What are the reasons why we would leave it the same? Or if we were going to change it, what would be a better way to say it? Um, and the idea look for opportunities to make things better. Maybe make it easier to do your jobs, or make it easier for the submitters or the preparers to do their jobs as well. And I think since we're at 12:30, we're going to call it a day on this. The conversation will continue. I thank everybody for your input. It's tremendously appreciated. And we're here to make things better. So let's keep working on it and keep talking to each other. All right. All right, everybody. Thank you. I wish you all a good rest of the day. And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye bye.